So, Dr. Vincent, you've won the Indianapolis Prize. What do you think?
I'm pretty darn excited. It's thrilling. It's really lovely. First of all, it makes my team so happy and proud, but also it's the first time an ocean person has won. So that gives us a brilliant opportunity to talk about ocean conservation and invite everybody to be part of the gang saving the seas.
What is it about the seahorse that you love?
Well, first of all, only the male gets pregnant, and you got to enjoy that fact. So people will stop and talk about male pregnancy with great delight. And then also they are tremendous flagship species. They actually engage people in ocean conservation. You can talk about their problems and the solutions that will help their populations, and people will listen because they're so quirky and amazing.
Do seahorses look different in different parts of the world?
Well, they're different sizes. You have them from the size of your baby fingernail to about the size of your forearm. There are about 44 types of seahorses, and the US has 4 types, really.
And what is your favorite type of seahorse?
The type you have in the Caribbean, yeah.
What makes those seahorses so interesting?
Oh, they change color wonderfully. They can change to be almost every color you can see behind me. So they're spectacularly wonderful. And also, you know, they help us tell the stories of ocean conservation. So the biggest single threats to the seahorses are bottom trawling. So when you drop a heavily weighted net and you gouge and scrape the bottom, you destroy the habitats in their paths, but you also remove everything in the way. So when you go out trawling, you mostly catch stuff you didn't mean to land, including the seahorses. And it's that bottom trawl pressure that we really want to see end. And you know, any listener who wants to make a difference, just keep asking people, is my seafood bottom trawled? And if it is, you got to think about it.
And one of those things I've seen you talk about, asking not to buy any shrimp.
Yeah, well, most shrimp is caught by this bottom trawling, or it's cultured in coastal habitats that used to be mangroves and are now shrimp ponds. But going beyond that, you know, we really would love people to bring oceans into the policy conversation. So you have an election coming up in the US. Be really great if everybody was asking all the time, well, what about our ocean? What's our national ocean policy? How are we going to look after our ocean? Because a very high proportion of the US's territorial area is in fact ocean. So we need the protected areas in the ocean, and the US is doing well on those, but let's make them as effective as possible. And we need to make certain that we're managing fisheries so that they're all legal and sustainable. And we need to make sure wildlife trade is properly under control. And these questions can be asked by every citizen and should be asked by every citizen to open the conversation to ocean conservation.
What is the most significant thing that your project Seahorse has accomplished?
Well, perhaps 2 examples. One is that we put in place with local leadership and local engagement 35 marine protected areas that where no fishing is allowed, and we've seen measurable gains in fish and marine life there. But secondly, working actually with the government of the US leading, we were able to get the first ever export regulations for marine fishes at a global level. So with one of the UN conventions, we were able to convince them to start regulating seahorse exports so they could only be done if it was sustainable and legal. And that was the first time this had ever been achieved for marine fishes. And now 182 countries are required to prove sustainable legal exports for species like sharks and rays and reef fishes and European eels, all following on from that precedent that we set with the seahorses.
Are there companies and countries fishing specifically for seahorses?
There are some direct fisheries. Some trawl fisheries target seahorses now, including in Vietnam. There are also some people go out to catch seahorses specifically for the aquarium trade. And that obviously is a trade that is more localized, but can put a lot of pressure on some species. But most of the seahorses are caught in these unthinking, poorly managed fisheries that are really just catching everything in their path. Not just the bottom trawls, also some gill nets, some seine nets. You know, fisheries are obviously vital for our economy and for our human well-being and livelihoods, but we've got to be managing them really tightly. I do want to comment, the US is one of the leaders in fisheries management, sustainable fisheries management. So I would hope that that expertise can also be translated into supporting other countries' growth in that domain.
You've been underwater, you've studied them, I imagine most of your life. What is that like when you're down underneath the water and you're able to see these seahorses up close?
It's absolutely magical watching seahorses. I'm fond of saying they're the only fish that holds your hand. If I have to tickle them so they'll let go for me to measure them, they then hold on to me instead. And then they form these permanent pair bonds. So every morning they come together and the male and the female dance and pirouette, and then they rise through the water column in this gorgeous ballet till eventually the female inserts eggs into the male's brood pouch. And hey, they're fertilized in the male's brood pouch, so he knows he's the father. Can't say that about all male animals.
And I imagine that you have seen areas of the ocean where we have seen this bottom trolling, and then when it's stopped. What is the difference that you see when that kind of bottom trolling stops?
What a fantastic question. If you stop bottom trawling, you get resilience. The ocean starts to recover. If you take the pressure off, the ocean can often find its own way forward, and we can sit back and watch for a while and then figure out what interventions are needed. But honestly, there are always solutions to things, but the solution to the bottom trawling is largely take the pressure off, constrain the pressure, limit where you can fish, when you can fish with these gears. The best thing is we have solutions for the ocean. I'm an ocean optimist, absolutely. But what we have to do is bring our entire communities into caring for the ocean and insist that policymakers actually take it seriously.
Mm. I imagine that some of our viewers who love to travel would love to know where they could do scuba diving or and snorkeling to see seahorses. Where could people see these seahorses?
Yeah, well, the US has seahorses, one species on the West Coast up to Southern California, and then 3 species all the way down the East Coast and around the Gulf. And if you go down to Florida Keys, Florida in general, you can find the tiny dwarf seahorses about this size, and you can find 2 species of bigger ones. If you snorkel inshore waters with care, taking local advice, you should be able to find them and watch them. Don't take them, but find them and watch them. And they don't make good aquarium pets at all. They tend to die really quickly in aquariums. So go and visit your local public aquarium, but they're not good animals to keep at home, not at all.
I have 2 final questions. What impact will winning the Indianapolis Prize have on your work moving forward?
I think the best of all impacts, which is to grow the number of people who are interested in and committed to ocean conservation. We wouldn't be having this conversation if I hadn't won the Indianapolis Prize. And the people listening can just be such a big part of the solution. So that's exciting to me to grow the number of people who are committed. And the other thing is it gives a stamp of approval, which means that when I want to go and talk to any colleague, any expert, any potential facilitator of action, I don't have to keep proving that I know what I'm talking about because I've just been granted one of the greatest honors in animal conservation.
Mm. And maybe as a last comment, why should people care about the ocean?
Yeah, the ocean is our life. Let's start with the fact that 99% of the planet's living space is in the ocean. Let's realize that the ocean provides food and natural resources on which we depend. It regulates our climate, and it's a really important carbon sink to deal with climate change. So protecting the seahorse habitats is protecting ourselves. That's where we store what we call blue carbon in the seagrasses, the mangroves, the bottom vegetation that will enable our climate to be a bit better mediated. If we look after the oceans, friends, we're basically looking after ourselves.
Congratulations. Great work. And we look forward to meeting you here in Indianapolis.
I'm so excited about when I can actually get down and be with you. And thanks a ton. It's been really fun talking to you.
Thanks for all the work you've done.
Great.